Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 1 meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Hayner?
Present here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Dish?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Griswold?
Here, Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Song?
Here, Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Grand?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Redina?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Mayor Taylor?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Iyer?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Nelson?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Briggs?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Ramlawi?
Present, Ann Arbor.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Ramlawi, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? I'm sorry, Councilmember Hayner.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just, many of us received emails from folks asking that, some even pleading that someone who was in the affirmative on the approval of Concord Pines reconsider that, because I think a lot of people felt that they were kind of blindsided by the notion of cutting down all these trees. And so I would just ask if anyone who did vote in the affirmative reconsider that. It would be a great service to the public. I'm not able to.
Further discussion of the agenda? All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. We have communications today from our city administrator.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Just wanted to say hi, glad to be with you all. Nothing further. Thank you, sir.
Well, as with the brevity of your comments is in inverse proportion to the delight that we have you here in our having you here. So welcome from one and all. We now have an introduction from the chair of our Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, Dr. Jackson. Dr. Jackson, you have the con and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I am Lisa Jackson. I'm the chair of Ann Arbor's Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. Welcome, Administrator Dohoney. I'd first like to share a couple of updates. First, ICPOC has conducted interviews with 4 candidates for commissioner positions, and we will soon be recommending 3 of them to our council liaisons for their review and subsequent presentation to the entirety of council for your consideration. We were blown away by the individuals with whom we spoke, and we hope that council will possess a similar level of confidence in their aptitude for and potential contributions to our commission. Moving on, I'd like to also announce that the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, in partnership with the Southeast Michigan Criminal Justice Policy Research Group at Eastern Michigan University, was awarded a grant from the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan. And the grant is going to facilitate technical assistance for analyzing the police traffic stop data that we've been working on, such that we'll be able to share the analysis with the community, do some really thorough analysis. It'll pay for some national experts as well to assist Dr. Karpiak and his team. And we're intending to do outreach bi-directionally. We'd like to share information with the community, but also get community feedback based on the information that we share and with all of the communities who are affected by policing. The main topic I'd like to discuss with you today, though, is radical imagination. For those of us tasked with assessing and advocating for policy, which notably includes you, City Council, the notion of relying on our imaginations to develop new solutions to existing problems sounds at best silly. Why? Because knowing that we'll ultimately be expected to justify our proposed solutions, it feels much safer to fall back on the kind of moderated, reasonable policies that offend no one and are easily backed up with easy to understand statistics. However, when we do that, we lose some opportunities. Now, to be clear, I'm not about to suggest that anyone completely cast aside data-backed analysis or the gradual implementation of new policies. As a researcher and a scientist, I would never advocate for that. However, what I'm going to say is that while our solutions should be well-reasoned and backed by the data, we should also allow the thinking that ultimately creates those solutions to be radical and uninhibited by precedent. For example, you, City Council, acknowledged in your resolution that some public safety calls are better suited for non-police persons with extensive training and expertise in public health, mental health, and human services. Yet, often when we talk about policing alternatives, we can feel constrained by existing institutions, like policing as we've already known it, as we always have known it. And unfortunately, that leads to alternatives that kind of are just different flavors of the same thing. And a case in point might be community policing. Community policing can add more police interaction to communities by having more police patrolling and walking through communities. And while some people feel like that makes their communities feel safer, others contend that it will expose disadvantaged and minoritized groups to more surveillance. And so that doesn't necessarily make people feel safer. To be clear, the idea of community policing always involves police who are always armed. Chief Cox has been clear that police will always be armed. However, when our thinking is constrained in this way, we end up with variations of the same problems we already have. There are clear cases when armed police might not be so helpful or necessary, and community policing doesn't address the long mistrust of the police. Simply adding more police into the community isn't going to make communities that have distrusted the police suddenly trust them more. Therefore, we need to give ourselves the space to imagine something radically different. For example, imagine if we had the resources to staff such a wide array of community services that we had the most qualified people showing up to every kind of call. We wouldn't have to worry about negative externalities of having undertrained police dealing with situations that they shouldn't have to touch. Let's contrast that with the current reality in which I have talked to so many parents who fear for their children who were having a drug overdose, but then had the child had even greater anxiety when an armed police officer responded to a 911 call. Certainly that person would be better served by a community drug abuse expert who deals with overdose often and is prepared to help the person, not arrest them. Would Anthony Harrison, whose introduction into the criminal legal system started with kicking over trash cans, have been better served by a person who responded to his teenage anger and frustration as opposed to an armed police officer who criminalized his behavior? And while that vision of community safety doesn't exist in Ann Arbor today, it could, particularly as we start thinking about unarmed, non-police expert responses to public safety concerns, such as overdoses, concerns about people who are unhoused, and certainly in terms of responding to people in a mental health crisis. Grounding our thinking in the potential of our ideals, rather than in the paralysis of our reality, can provide us with the path we need to move forward. I know that the city administrator is going to come forward with an unarmed response plan in just a few weeks. And it is our sincere hope that the administrator and staff have been consulting with the many cities, big and small, and even college towns such as Ithaca, New York, and Berkeley, California, that have already begun to implement such policies with encouraging results. The many improved outcomes range from the decreased stress of police officers who are no longer required to calls for which they feel ill-equipped, the decreased stress of people who have past trauma related to policing, all the way to people in crisis who get expert mental health help that is no longer compounded by incarceration. Grounding our thinking in the potential of our ideals, rather than the paralysis of our reality, can provide us with the path we need to move forward. And it is my sincere hope that we can take those steps forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. We now have an introduction with respect to the Sustainable Energy Utility Report by the head of the Office of OSI, Dr. Stoltz. Dr. Stoltz, you have the con. Once you moved on over, there you go.
Thank you, Mayor and members of Council, for the opportunity to discuss a new report with you tonight. Ms. Beaudry, can I get sharing privileges if possible? There we go. Thank you. All right. And thank you, Dr. Jackson, too, for the concept of radical imagination. That is somewhat relevant to the concept here. So in our brief time together tonight, I just want to share with you a little bit about an idea, its history, and its potential application for our community, and that is the concept of a sustainable energy utility. First, and this is more for the members of the public that might be joining our conversation tonight, I wanted to ground the SEU conversation in our existing goals. And as you all know, in November of 2019, Council unanimously adopted the goal of achieving a just transition to community-wide carbon neutrality by the year 2030. In June of 2020, Council adopted the plan and framework for how to achieve that goal, known as A20. Key to grounding that work is our community's greenhouse gas emissions profile, which shows that most of our emissions come from building electricity use and from natural gas used to heat and cool our built infrastructure. Given this reality, we know that solutions to reducing local climate pollution necessitate finding pathways to address energy usage in our built environment. Over the last few months, OSI staff, along with members of the Energy Commission, have systematically been evaluating various pathways to help reduce energy-related emissions. These pathways have included things such as on-site renewable energy generation, virtual power purchase agreements, community choice aggregation, My Green Power program, virtual power reduction agreements, and a litany of other options. Underlying all of these concepts has been the Commission's growing understanding, as well as staff's, of energy-related law here in Michigan. Now, the purpose of today's presentation is not to discuss the pros and the cons of each of these various concepts and or why we'll likely need to do many of them to hit our clean energy goals. Instead, I wanted to share another idea that emerged during our energy exploration together. Now, to ground that, let me just start by saying the Michigan Constitution very clearly protects the rights of cities and villages to create their own municipal utility, either via a taking, known as condemnation, and a direct buyout of the incumbent utility and their infrastructure, or via competition. And that's direct competition with that incumbent utility. To date, every community that has started their own municipal electric utility in Michigan, with the last being Zeeland, which originally formed in 1902, sold in 1915, and reestablished in 1935, has done so through condemnation. However, due to massive improvements in energy technology and significant declines in the cost for things like solar and energy storage, competition has become a viable pathway, and competition is at the heart of the SEU concept. So what is a sustainable energy utility? Simply put, a sustainable energy utility is a public utility that is 100% renewably powered, reliable, local, shared, and publicly owned. As envisioned in our report, an SEU would focus on generating local clean energy that would feed directly into our homes, businesses, places of worship, and community centers. This clean energy would be paired with storage to help improve energy reliability and offered in conjunction with deep energy waste reduction programs to help our residents lower their energy costs and usage, all while improving comfort. Over time, the SEU could grow to offer more programs aligned with our A20 goals, programs like support with beneficial electrification, geothermal, help transitioning our transportation system to electric, and micro and nano grids. The concept of an SEU is grounded in choice, providing Ann Arborites another way to procure a large portion of their energy use, one that is coming from clean, reliable sources. To ground our thinking about an SEU and other potential pathways to achieving 100% renewable energy powering our community, which is strategy 1 in A20, staff created 6 guiding objectives. These include shifting our energy system from carbon-intensive to carbon-free sources, finding solutions commensurate with the timeframe and ambition established in A20, centering residents, customers, and giving people choice in how they procure their energy, centering the needs of low-income and historically underrepresented groups in the energy system with a focus on affordability, sustainability, and improved comfort, viewing energy as a service, not just a commodity, and improving the reliability of our energy system and thereby the resilience of our community. With those objectives, we put together a group of technical, legal, and policy experts to help us analyze the feasibility of a sustainable energy utility. It quickly became clear that the concept was feasible. So we transitioned to what services a sustainable energy utility could offer. On the next 2 slides, I'll share just one potential approach to how we could phase in an SEU locally based on the goals we've established. First, the SEU could enable a lot more people to get the benefits of solar by directly paying for installations on residential and business roofs, carports, or ground-mounted systems. Residents wouldn't be the owner of that solar system, the public or the SEU would. Residents, however, would subscribe to purchase their energy at a rate that's based on the costs and the SEU operations from the system that they have on their roof or on their neighbor's roof. If the residents' energy needs are met, any excess power flows into a battery system. This means that the resident could still have power if the big traditional grid goes down. Additionally, the SEU would not be limited by current utility restrictions, things like the limit on the size of solar on one's roof or the amount of solar we can inject into the grid. Instead, we could focus on maximizing local solar production. Over time, individual solar systems could be connected through micro and nano grids, and I'll talk more about that in a second. In phase one, the SEU could also offer and should offer, we argue, a series of robust energy waste reduction services. This would help people lower energy demand and improve comfort. Likely some of those services will be available to anyone who subscribes, just like we currently have energy waste reduction services for our incumbent utilities. Others would be opt-in energy waste reduction services that individuals can choose to undertake based on need and potentially finance through on-bill finance, which is the third offering we propose in the first phase, should council decide this is something they're interested in pursuing. Through on-bill finance, the SEU is able to pay the upfront costs of improvements, things like efficiency or electrification upgrades, and residents pay back the cost through their utility bills. This allows the cost of those improvements to stay with the home as opposed to the residents, and helps reduce the initial upfront costs needed to make improvements, making it far more accessible to renters, low-income individuals, and many others in our community. In phase two of the SEU, we could focus on micro and nano grids that enable neighbors to share power across property lines. Forget the noise in the background. If a resident needs more power than their system is able to produce, they can pull from the neighbor if there's excess available. If a resident is generating more energy than they need, they send it to the microgrid, perhaps to the batteries that are connected within the system. And if a neighbor doesn't have good solar viability, they pull power from the shared battery system. Through this model, the whole neighborhood can access and share clean, locally powered energy. In this phase of the SEU, we would have to stand up limited poles and wires to connect households and businesses. That's new equipment that we own, thereby ensuring its quality and its viability for us. During the second phase, we can also look to create district-level geothermal systems, helping transition our heating and cooling loads to sustainable practices and reducing our reliance on natural gas. And we can support beneficial electrification programs, helping folk transition to electric appliances where that makes sense for them. ISAU can leverage these things using on-bill finance and packaging improvements together that are customized for that home, that business, or that community center. Later phases are likely also going to include things like community solar offerings. Those kinds of offerings need a little bit more poles and wires to distribute the energy across the community. But this is essential to helping us ensure that anyone that wants to participate in our community can participate in the SEU. I know there was a lot to digest. I know we had a little bit of time together, but I just want to bring this back to the core of an SEU. SEU is a municipal utility that focuses on generating local clean energy fast. It's about leveraging existing technologies and practices, such as solar and storage, to reduce emissions quickly while improving reliability. It's about ensuring that all Ann Arborites have access to solutions to improve comfort, reduce bills, and reap the benefits of the clean energy economy. The SEU, as I mentioned before, is about generating locally owned renewable power. There's limited distribution of that energy because it's staying local. That means we don't have to worry about buying a lot of poles and wires and can instead focus on generating our power for the community. And the good news is the SEU actually aligns really closely with council adopted energy criteria and principles. Creating an SEU is a novel endeavor, but the city has the building blocks needed to administer it, as we currently administer other utilities, water recovery, and stormwater. We can leverage that infrastructure to help with things like billing and customer service. We can work with peers around the state who already have existing utilities and do many of the services that the SEU envisions. We can work through contracts to install solar and storage and implement energy waste reduction programs, largely because these offerings need minimal maintenance once they're implemented. Or we could choose to build our own team. Regardless, we know how to run utilities, and we have opportunities to leverage experiences from around our own great state to implement the vision, goals, and objectives should we decide this is a good fit for Ann Arbor. In closing, our technical, legal, and policy analysis regarding the SEU found just a few steps necessary to move the concept forward, should that be of interest to our community. I just want to close with this. First, the advisory committee recommended starting a wait list to understand community interest in joining the SEU. This will help with step 2, conducting a rate analysis that determines what the rates would be to roll out the various phases of the sustainable energy utility and its services. Simultaneous with these 2 actions, the proposal is to identify potential governance structures and staffing needs for the SEU. Fourth, a required step is the passing of an ordinance that would enable the creation of the SEU. Importantly, our charter already gives us the right to start a publicly owned utility, so the ordinance is the only required step. Last, we need to determine how to get the seed capital to start the SEU. Once operational, the SEU will be self-sustaining, but we need to determine where the seed capital would come from. Depending on that path, whatever is decided, we may need to do a vote of the people. We may need to do a vote of the people or choose to do it regardless. But really, it's only if we're taking out debt financing that a vote of the people becomes necessary. And lastly, not on the screen, should we move forward, staff would also propose that we immediately conduct a technical assessment for the microgrids and nanogrids to understand the specific power dynamics and power technologies needed to establish these important features and elements of the SEU. This is something we can do pretty immediately should council and the community be interested in moving the concept forward. So I know that was fast and furious and a lot to digest, but we wanted to make sure you had a little bit of details about that concept. Anyone that's interested in listening, please check out our website. You can see it at the bottom of the screen here, www.a2gov.org/A2SEU. You can find out more. There's FAQs, the report is available there. And if you have any questions or potential interest, please feel free to send us an email at any time at sustainability@a2gov.org. Thank you.
Dr. Stoltz, thank you very much. We now come to public comment reserve time, and it is my understanding from the clerk that no members of the public have called in to speak at public comment reserve time. Is that confirmed, Ms. Beaudry?
That is correct.
Thank you. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Griswold.
Yes, the theme of my remarks tonight is safety. Someone reminded me of that today. That's sort of the theme that has motivated me for the last couple of decades. And the last meeting I mentioned bringing forward a resolution. I'm still working on that, a resolution that would focus on operations and evaluation of some of our pedestrian infrastructure. But before we talk about operations and evaluation, I think it's good to look at the data and to acknowledge what's been done. And so I sent an email to our city administrator today asking staff to prepare a summary report of the infrastructure improvements in the school walk zones from 2017 through the current period. And this was the result of work done by A2 Safe Transport. They did an analysis, turned it over to staff. Staff turned it into their tier 1, 2, and 3 projects. And I think that given that we're closing that effort, that staff deserves credit for the significant yet usually non-controversial improvements in the school walk zones over the last 5 years. I think that will also put into perspective the report from the Lower Town Mobility Committee regarding a loading zone at the STEAM school. Lastly, I want to mention that I was in Berkeley, California last week. It's very clear just looking around the tremendous pressure that the university has put on housing in that area. In addition, Yale was in the news today because of the burden that is put on New Haven, Connecticut. So I think that there is a movement afoot. I would like to continue to work with some stakeholders, develop a policy so that I can bring something
Council members?
forward as a resolution. Thanks.
Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to briefly remind folks that tomorrow is Election Day here in Ann Arbor. And so polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And also, if you are a resident who is still holding on to your absentee ballot at this point, please remember to return that in person. You can drop it off at one of our city's secure Dropbox locations or at the city clerk's office. And all of the information on tomorrow's election and Dropbox locations can be found at a2gov.org/elections. Thanks.
Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to the point that my colleague in Ward 1, Councilmember Hayner, raised about the Concord Pines proposal. And in fact, I've been answering a number of these emails because being on Planning Commission, I feel like I can share some information. And I wanted to remind everyone that Concord Pines was an instance of a project that does not need a zoning variance to go forward because it proposed to build what the site was zoned for. Council doesn't really have discretion in such instances. The question to approve is administrative. It's not a matter of policy. So for that reason, professional planning associations strongly advise that such by right projects not come to the council table at all, because it creates the false impression of the leeway that council has. And I understand that there was kind of a daunting number of trees being removed by this proposal. The city forester and the landscape architect on Planning Commission thoroughly reviewed this. And just under half of the trees running through the middle of the site was ranked a low quality woodland. It contains many invasives. There were some older valuable trees among the rest, but they too are mixed in with invasives and less valuable types. So given the relative value of these trees related to Ann Arbor's woodlands more generally, this was not the kind of project that council should be going out on a limb for. And I'm sorry that I didn't really mean that pun.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. In addition to my ward colleagues, reminder about Election Day tomorrow. In our ward, those who vote in the 3-6 or 3-9, which both vote at Garlett Middle School, just for tomorrow's election, will be voting just right down the street at Mitchell Elementary. So for that one time, fortunately, they're right next to each other, so it shouldn't be too big of a burden. And knowing our clerk, there will be lots of signage. Just also want to congratulate the entire community on getting back to Halloween. I think that was a real positive. Last night, I know many of us had record numbers of trick-or-treaters, and we're maybe scrambling. We had about 200 at my house, so it was just great to see so many families and community members out enjoying one another and having somewhat of a normal celebration. And we'll also be looking forward to many of our 5 to 11-year-olds getting vaccinated this week. So happy vaccinations to all those families.
Ms. Beaudry, I believe Councilmember Amlawi is in the waiting room, if you would be so kind. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I just want to alert everybody to the fact that there's a meeting on proposed rezoning, proposed transit corridor district at South State and Eisenhower. This is in the whole of Ward 4. That's going to be on November 9th at 7 p.m. It's a Zoom meeting to learn about the zoning and offer your feedback on it. Thanks.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks. A few ward specific things. First, it was a great pleasure to attend the opening of the African American Cultural and Historical Museum on Pontiac Trail last weekend. They certainly struggled over the last couple of years with COVID, where they weren't able to have their regular fundraising and so on, but they managed to really through an excellent combined effort and the generosity of some artists and other folks in our community to open up that building. And so I'm looking forward to that being a long-standing part of this neighborhood, the history and story of the Underground Railroad and so on, that it happens in that handful of blocks. It was just really great to meet folks out there. Second, just to let folks know, I'm, Council Member Ramwali and I have talked about this several times, both being interested in the downtown areas, and I'm going to be bringing we're talking about doing a consideration of looking at finding out what our public bathroom situation here is in the community, and the conversation that we had last week about providing period products in public bathrooms, I think was important and didn't go far enough. And so I want to do a survey of what we have available and if there is a need for more, and kind of move that project forward, because I think there is a need for a better understanding, at least, of what public facilities we provide as a community. I know a lot of that's part of parks. Speaking of parks, I spoke with a police officer down by Wheeler Park, where folks are camping out in the bathrooms down there. And it was kind of disappointing at getting to the ICPOC comments earlier. Basically you call the 911 emergency 911 or a regular 911 non-emergency number. And the choices are, we'll send an officer down there to run them off, or we can give you the phone number for the shelter association and possibly port. And so that's really not neither one of those is a great choice. And so it speaks broader to our need to completely address what kinds of services we're allowed to provide as a community, and what kinds of services should we provide as a community, and what role will AAPD play in that. So it's a lot of stuff happening right now, and I'm glad.
Councilmember Amlali.
Thank you, and thanks for having me readmitted as quickly as possible. The internet connection is a little unstable. Just a couple things here to follow up on what was said, but first I want to let my residents in the 5th Ward who've been experiencing a lengthy construction process on West Liberty that was supposed to only go for about a month. It's gone on for, I think, well over 2 months. Talked to some folks working over there who expressed to me what they've been going through. There was some GSI information that was inaccurate, some valves on the water mains that weren't operating properly, so it's led in a great delay. They're hoping to have West Liberty west of 7th opened up by the middle of November. So hang in there, we're almost there. I know they were working over the weekend nonstop trying to get that connection to the main water main on 7th. It's been quite a difficult task. Following up on Councilmember Hayner's comments, yes, I welcome that, and I appreciate the efforts and the reminder of us working on that. Hopefully with our new city administrator, we can get moving again on policies that have been kind of delayed for that reason, that being on the top of my list. It does fall on the heels of some issues that were raised to me at the LDFA board meeting last week, where Spark has major concerns of safety for their employees and others at Liberty Plaza. So much so that they are entertaining the idea of hiring private security to help protect their employees, which
recording in progress.
Councilmember.
I will follow up my conclusions at the end of the meeting.
Councilmember Song.
I'd like to thank the organizers who hosted a conversation
Recording stopped.
on our child care crisis. It was the Michigan Caregivers and Student Parents at U of M last Friday. We had a number of elected folks, parents and child caregivers who gathered and had a really candid conversation on the challenges facing our community in securing child care and pay equity, affordable housing, and just trying to figure out if we could navigate a way to fund this need adequately, quickly. and see if we can find collaborations between the city, the county, private providers, and employers. So thanks to Kat Hadley, Jessica Pelton, and Liz Lynn, so 3 women who pulled this together in pretty quick fashion. I just also wanted to share, I don't know if folks had heard this really great piece on NPR on urban planners living Halloween and using a trick or treat test on really identifying density, walkability, pedestrian safety in our neighborhoods, and how that's an attraction for a lot of young families coming to areas, including our own city. So I encourage you to take a listen. Thanks.
My apologies to Councilmember Ramami, Councilmember Song. I was in the process of trying to demute myself and accidentally hit the record button on my mute and then on my Zoom, and then accidentally turned off. Then, of course, turned off the record button once I realized what was going on. So that was a little bit of the electronic interruptions that I think you both may have perceived or may have heard. So that was what was going on, and my apologies. Further communication from council. I have one bit of delightful communication. That is a resolution to appoint Milton Tahoney Jr. to the Building Authority, Downtown Development Authority, and the Economic Development Corporation Board. Moved by Councilmember Griswold, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of MC1. All in favor? All opposed? It is approved with 11 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to effecting this as a one-step appointment. Mr. Tahoney, again, triple welcome, and we look forward to your service on these various boards. We now have the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Radina. Discussion, please, of the consent agenda. All in favor? All opposed? The consent agenda is approved. 11 council members present, all voting the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA1, CA3, CA4, CA5, CA6, and that is all. We now come to our public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council, the community about matters of about a specific subject matter of the public hearing. That is to say, the specific item on the agenda. To speak at a public hearing, one need not have signed up in advance, but your speech must relate to the specific subject matter of the public hearing. That is to say, the subject matter on the agenda. To speak at a public hearing, speak at this public hearing, please enter the number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148, 942-1273-2148. Once you are connected, please further enter *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. When it is your turn to speak, our clerk will identify you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. When it is your turn to speak, you'll have 3 minutes in which to speak. So please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend sections an ordinance to amend sections 1451 to 1455 of Chapter 17, the reapportionment of wards of Title I of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Adam Goodman, do you have a comment?
Yes, hi. My name's Adam Goodman. I'm a resident of the 5th Ward. So in the last several months, both the State Redistricting Commission and the Washtenaw County Apportionment Commission were holding a whole series of public meetings to hear from community stakeholders and understand their needs before taking on the task of drawing new districts. So I think it's just an interesting contrast that here in the city of Ann Arbor, we have a fully formed plan that just landed on the agenda last meeting. And as far as public input goes, I guess this public hearing is basically it. Now I'm aware, as I'm sure you all are, that the city charter has some very specific requirements dating back to, I guess, 1967, that we have pie-shaped boards converging at the center of the city. Whatever the original intent of this policy, it's also widely understood today that this tends to disenfranchise students by diluting their voice. So the thing that I found interesting, though, is a while back, I found a news article in the AIDL's old news archives from the 70s or 80s. I wasn't able to pull it up today because their system's down for maintenance, but it was about a political fight over ward boundaries in which some of the proposed maps were being explicitly drawn to give students a stronger voice, even in the context of all of these maps complying with the pie-shaped word requirement. So, you know, I think what we should take away from this precedent is that the requirements in the city charter might not tie our hands as much as we seem to think. But in any case, you know, I do kind of expect that this ordinance will pass tonight, so be it. But whatever the mechanism, I think it's long past time, and Ann Arbor had a serious conversation about whether our ward boundaries are actually serving the needs of our community and ensuring equitable representation on council. And tonight it seems like we've missed out on an opportunity to do that, and instead we're proceeding, as we often do, from the assumption that we should simply maintain the status quo to the greatest extent possible. And I kind of think that's a shame. That's all. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't see any other hands raised.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We now have before us the minutes. Special session of October 6, work session and special section of October 12, and the regular session meeting minutes of October 18, 2021. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Amawi, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of A1. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. B1, an ordinance to amend section 1451 to 1455 of chapter 17, the reapportionment of wards of title 1 of the code of the city of Ann Arbor, moved by Councilmember Nelson, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of B1. Councilmember Griswold.
I want to thank Adam Goodman for speaking tonight. I have heard similar comments from community members. Some have gone so far as to refer to the pie-shaped wedges as Republican gerrymandering. That may be a bit strong, but there are students and others who are interested in changing the charter to take out the requirement to have those pie-shaped wedges. And so while this is not the time to do it, in the future we can talk about that and actually having some action to look at the charter. So again, I don't think there was a lot that we could change or a lot that we could do given what's specified in our charter, but I hope that there's ongoing effort to make some changes in the future.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge the work of our city clerk, Jackie Beaudry, because I know that in the conversations that I had or the communications I had with her, there was really an effort to keep neighborhoods kind of cohesive, and the tweaks to rebalance this I know was not an easy task. So I just want to thank her for her work.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks. Yeah, I've heard the complaints that I've heard mostly seem to be centered about this pie-shaped notion is that somehow it has been designed to exclude or break up the university's presence or authority, or maybe the students' potential to have a student representative on city council. And I'm not sure if that's so, although I know that Ward 1 has a good amount of student population, possibly the largest, although this redistricting, the shifting of the boundaries gives away several thousand to Ward 4 this year, with South Quad, West Quad, and that area down there going away. So I'm not sure that it does that. I think there were also concerns about the downtown isn't fairly represented, but I think we know that the downtown has its own representation by way of the DDA and so on, and business and merchant associations and so on. So, I'm not super critical of this restructuring. I understand the balancing. I know that it's going to be rapidly out of date as construction continues unabated here in Ward 1. And so, 10 years from now, it's going to change again. And there's nothing stopping us, as far as I know, from having a conversation prior to that and reapportioning these wards. I mean, the clerk would have to speak to that. Is there any kind of state, I guess this is a question, is there any kind of state prohibition on us revisiting this ward boundary makeup at any time in the future prior to the next mandated reappraisal based on the federal census? This could be brought back, I guess, is my, to sum up.
You're asking about the charter amendment. So that would require an amendment to the city charter that the voters would approve if the pie-shaped formation was taken out. So that would require a public vote. I would have to check with the city attorney, but my guess would be that the change would then take effect with the next census. I don't think there's a precedent to change the district's mid 10-year cycle.
Yeah, I didn't think so myself. So that's why I was asking. Thank you.
I'll follow up with that, Councilmember Hayner, on that. I believe the clerk is correct on that, but I will just double check for my own knowledge. I don't know offhand.
Further discussion? For my part, I'd like to echo my true and earnest thanks to staff, Ms. Beaudry's, and all who work with her on this. It was a seamless process, removed from electoral intentionality, and I'm grateful for the work that you and the rest have done. I'll observe that forget it. I was going to talk about my law review note, which relates to census vote dilution and the census undercount. But if anyone's interested, I'd be delighted to talk with you. Anyway, may I have a motion? So we've been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC1 resolution opposing the Secure Michigan vote petition and any other efforts aimed at restricting voter access and voter rights, moved by Councilmember Adina, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of DC1. Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank our clerk for bringing this to the last policy agenda committee meeting that we had for discussion. That's what prompted this resolution to come forward. For those who are not familiar, this is an effort by largely Republican political activists here in the state to exploit a constitutional loophole in our ballot proposal process that would essentially allow this proposal to be enacted without a majority vote and without oversight from the governor. So many of these pieces that are in this Secure MI Vote petition have been passed by the Republican-controlled legislature. Governor Whitmer has the ability to veto those currently. What would happen in this case is if Republicans secure 10% of the previous gubernatorial election signatures to put this supposedly on the ballot, will be the language. The loophole allows the Republican legislature to pass this by a simple majority vote without any oversight from the governor and without requiring it to go to a vote of the people. And so this resolution registers our city's opposition to this effort to undermine voter rights here in Michigan. And also urges citizens here and elsewhere throughout the state to decline to sign this proposal or this petition. Thanks.
Councilmember Dish.
I would like to be added as a co-sponsor and to express my gratitude for colleagues and city clerk for putting this on the agenda.
Councilmember Song.
Myself as well, if I could be added as a co-sponsor. I was on the executive committee for Prop 3 back in 2018, which helped secure no reason absentee ballot. So this attempt by Republicans really undermines that work that we did years ago and hoping to secure and make our voting process more accessible. So if I could be added to a sponsor, thank you.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. I was hoping that Ms. Beaudry, if she wouldn't mind, might be able to speak for a second around why the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks has also has found this so important of an issue as well, and also particularly the impact to clerks' offices in terms of the potential ban of in-kind support and on volunteers.
Sure. The Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks did take a survey of our members, and the vast majority, over 80% of members that responded are opposed to this initiative. Our concern, especially with the in-kind donations, is that that may be as far-reaching as any polling place use that isn't city-owned. I believe it says the city would have to pay market rate. So a lot of communities are concerned about churches and other community centers. We're also looking into whether that would also mean the university buildings that we utilize, or even public schools. And then many clerks have volunteer support, whether that's people working their lines, helping with voter registration drives. So the prohibition would be potentially on any granting of help, whether that's through monetary support or even volunteerism. And then also concerns about absentee ballot applications of longtime absentee voters being required to provide additional identifying information on their application. And our concern is the number of provisional ballots or rejected applications due to misunderstanding of voters that these previously were not required of longtime registered and absent voters. So those were the two primary concerns from the clerk perspective for election administration.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, and thanks for bringing this to the policy committee. And I urge all in our community to decline to sign this petition.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thanks. And thank you, Clerk Beaudry, for bringing this forward to the policy committee. You know, as the chair of the policy committee, I'm going to keep I'll keep my comments brief because I don't want to rehash what everyone else has said. Councilmember Radina really explained it all very, very well. I just want to stress that really what we're saying with this resolution is, you know, decline to sign. So many people sign petitions just, you know, because they think, well, I may not agree with this. I may agree with it. I'm not even going to read it very closely because we'll just find out about it later and we'll let the voters decide. That is not the case with this petition. By signing it, you are supporting putting it into our laws. And this is very dangerous legislation to our democracy. So please decline to sign. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
Well, thanks. I think it's nice that we recognize that the potential that low turnout has for sort of having a non-representative or corrupting effect on the democracy, the strength of democracy. And we've supported my last 3 years or so on council. We've supported various ways to support the clerk's office to try and expand access to ballot locally, and I think that's been important. I think some of that has paid off. I think we have pretty decent turnout here in Ann Arbor, which is a good thing. It's kind of parallel to this matter. We have a special election tomorrow that that's a situation where we have set ourselves up to have low voter turnout, and so we kind of even while we're saying, hey, we're concerned about low turnout having an effect on something we don't like, we don't necessarily always have those same problems when low voter turnout has an effect on something we do like. School millage election in May, special election for 4 charter things tomorrow, and so on. And so I'd like us to, take genuine consideration of what we are doing as a body to support and build efforts at democracy here locally, as well as at the state level. And, I want to support this. I just, I want to point out that a lot of times we do things that, create situations for low voter turnout. I mean, I'd love to see a charter change that said, you have to have a minimum amount of turnout before a millage takes effect. I've had all kinds of people say I wish, because, the 10%, 12%, 14% of the people show up and stick the other 87% of the people with the bill. So things need to be done to increase voter turnout, not decrease it. So.
Further discussion? I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. This vote petition effort is another in a long line of insidious voter suppression efforts, largely coming from the Republican Party, in an effort to restrict people's access to the vote, in an effort to ensure and support minority rule. It's as simple as that. And I hope are shedding some additional light on this, and are encouraging people to decline to sign, because indeed, as Councilmember Iyer indicated, this is not merely signing the petition is part of the plan to restrict people's access to the ballot, and that is contrary to everything that we ought as a state and country to stand for. Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you, and thanks to the clerk for the work and others who brought this to the table. I won't extend our short meeting any longer. I just would like to be added as a co-sponsor, please. Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC2, resolution to approve the hiring of Atlene Kaur as city attorney, moved by Councilmember Grand, seconded by Councilmember Griswold. Discussion, please, of DC2. I guess I'd like to say that this, of course, comes to the administration committee after after Ms. Kaur interviewed here with staff members and with city attorney's office on multiple occasions. I think I feel free to feel able to say on the part of the committee that we are very excited about the prospect of moving forward with Ms. Kaur, and are delighted that she continues to explore interest in serving as our new city attorney. I will say, and it's important for us to note, there are a couple of aspects of the process that are worth highlighting. First, that in the event that she were to join us, that it would not come for some time. That is to say that she has additional commitments which run through perhaps April. And so if we are moving forward together, then that is something that that's the time frame that would in all likelihood be hit. Another thing I would like to say, though, as we are I expect expressing our enthusiasm for Ms. Kaur and bringing forward this resolution to approve her hiring, it is not a done deal. Ms. Kaur has, continues to, she has a distinguished career in the private sector and is in the process herself of exploring and considering whether municipal service is that she wants to take on. I'm hoping that the answer is yes. I've discussed this aspect of my communications with her, and she heartily approves of them, for indeed they are true. It's my well, I just want folks on council who are not in the administration committee to understand that, and certainly two members of the public that she is continuing to think through, what her next best steps are, and it is my firm and fond hope that those next best steps are to join the team on the third floor. Further comments. Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. As a member of the Council Administration Committee, I just want to thank Amy Sell, who was our consultant on this process, all the staff at the attorney's office, who was really instrumental in giving us valuable feedback all the way through, answering whatever questions we had. I know I personally went into this process with a lot of apprehension, given the person that we were looking to replace, and just the level of responsibility of this position, and was really pleasantly surprised at how smoothly the process has gone so far. So I am cautiously optimistic that we're just going to ride that wave of pleasant surprises, I guess. And that I know that the feedback that we received from Ms. Cower was incredibly positive. So hopefully we will be looking at a smooth transition where we have time to pass along some valuable institutional knowledge.
Councilmember Griswold.
Yes, I also want to acknowledge the contribution of Amy Sells, and also to point out the commitment to team building that we heard about during her interview was reflected in the way she interviewed and was willing to meet with small groups of attorneys. And so I am very optimistic and confident that what we heard in the interview is exactly how she will perform if she is hired as our city attorney. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
Well, thank you. And, obviously this isn't going to do anything for my reputation of being somewhat contrary, but I enjoyed the interview with this candidate, and, I wasn't completely thrilled with what I considered to be a lack of municipal experience, although I appreciated her direct, kind of forthright answer on that, on municipal law, environmental law, and so on, the things that I'm concerned and looking for in a candidate. And I just think I'm going to end up casting the lone no vote, and not based on the candidate's qualities or potential to succeed here at the city, which I think are both very high, but that I just think it's sort of odd that we essentially interviewed one person and now we're offering up the job. And so I just don't feel that I, have embraced a wide range enough of search and candidates, and, including potential internal candidates. And so it doesn't seem like enough to be offering this position up after such a short search. So if she accepts this position and it gets passed tonight and she accepts the position, I look forward to her, bringing all the, qualities that she mentioned in her interview with us, and, hopefully it'll be a good fit. But I'm not going to support it. It's too little too soon.
Councilmember Briggs.
Well, I feel completely opposite. I am very excited after this long national search to find that we have such incredible talent in our own community and within the 5th Ward, I might say. So I hope that Ms. Power will join us, and I think that it is quite impressive that considering what big shoes she has to fill, there's a great deal of integrity and competency and strength in our city attorney's office right now. And the fact that after these interviews with our administrators, with council, and senior leadership and city attorney's office, what we saw was a strong endorsement of her coming to the city. And I understand that there may need to be a longer transition time, but I hope that we can welcome her in this spring.
Councilmember Griswold.
As a member of the administration committee, I just want to state that this was a very robust interview process. And I would recommend to Councilmember Hayner that he reach out to Amy Sell and talk to her about the process, because while there was just one finalist, there were many candidates considered in the process. So thank you.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. I do share the enthusiasm of my colleague in the 5th Ward for many reasons, and Atleen being a resident of the Fifth Ward is just one of them. Her resume is outstanding. She interviewed extremely well and has the buy-in of the staff on the legal department, which I think is important. I will just like to put on record here that we did try to interview 2 people, and one person backed out before the final process that we undertook. Yes, it was unfortunate that we didn't have more people to interview in that final stage, but it was my belief that Atleen was head and shoulders above 8 out of the other 10, and the other person that came close just decided to withdraw their nomination to the job. So these are tough times to be a public servant, and I hope that Atleen finds it within her to give a big part of herself to the community and to serve in city government. Money is great and all, but as we know, it's not everything. And so there's other things that motivate us and is the reason we do what we do. So, and that doesn't come in the form of a paycheck. So hopefully that resonates with her, and we do have someone who can fill the big shoes that are going to be left vacant. Someone who comes with a lot of credentials and the ability to learn very quickly. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to also briefly add my excitement for this opportunity to vote this way tonight. I too, I think my biggest concern throughout this process was Attorney Cower's apparent lack of municipal experience coming into the role. But I think one of the benefits that we do have from Attorney Postma giving us such a long period of time to conclude this search, to find the right candidate, and then to hopefully onboard that person while he is still employed with the city, allows for kind of that transition, that onboarding, and really that time for Attorney Cower to get up to speed on all of the things that are impacting our city right now and what might be on the horizon. And so I am excited for this. I think that the potential for Mr. Postma to help with that transition really alleviated any of the concerns that I have, because I think it became very clear during the interview process that Attorney Cower was not only incredibly capable and experienced and up to the job, but I think she will be a quick study, and I look forward to working with her and welcoming her on board. So thank you.
Further discussion? Excellent. Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Amlawi.
Councilmember Umlawi,
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner,
No.
Councilmember Dish,
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Song,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Dina,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs,
Yes.
motion carries.
Mr. Postma, do we have the pleasure of a closed session today?
Mayor, we do not.
We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Amlawi, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Mr. Postma, do we have the pleasure of communications today from our city attorney?
The only thing I would add, it is interesting to watch the council vote on my successor, and I believe that the candidate is a strong candidate. And I've had the pleasure, she's called me several times to get a proper due diligence on the job, background information that I would give to any candidate interested in the budget, interested in the people that are here, interest in all sorts of things. And so I will tell you that she is a person with the talents to do deep due diligence, which is a talent that I admire, as you all know. And so in watching that, I would be remiss in not pointing out two things. One is Kevin McDonald in my office, along with Attorney Radabaugh, Margaret Radabaugh, they did a very good job internally. I was not part of the process internally to the city attorney's office, and that was proper. I did not want a role in that. They did a very good job of coordinating that with Attorney Sell and with the candidate. The people who spoke about those interviews, it was a multi-tiered process, and I appreciate the leadership of Attorney McDonald and Attorney Radabaugh. Also, again, the admin committee on this, I've spoken about this before. This was a very diligent search and a process that the admin committee worked very, very tirelessly on and very carefully, and came to a unanimous conclusion to bring this forward. And so this resolution coming from the admin committee, following on the heels of Milton Mahoney's offer and for the city administrator position, and he's now here, also unanimous, I believe bodes well for the city at the leadership levels. So with that, having watched the admin committee very carefully with this and provided them advice, I believe that they executed their task very wisely and appropriately.
Thank you. We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. To speak at public comment general time, please enter the number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Once you're connected further, please enter *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. When it is your turn to speak, our clerk will identify you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. You will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Is there anyone who would like to speak at public comment?
I don't see any of the callers on the line with their hands up.
Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Griswold.
This is something that I've talked to our city attorney, Stephen Postema, about, and that is for greater transparency. I requested that he phase out the new council orientation for legal issues, and it's something that I don't want to put would be greater transparency. If we go into closed session, we need to vote for the reason that we're going there, and council members can also learn from each other by discussing new issues. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank Mr. Postema for making that change. Thank you.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
If I could allow Mr. Postema to talk first.
Thank you, council member. I just wanted to say I have talked with the council. It has been my practice after 1 year to open up and have two time periods for open office hours. As you know, council members can contact me anytime outside those hours. The only condition is that there is not a quorum in either of those, and that those issues. There may be some topics that we bring forward, but just as a policy matter, we don't have a quorum, but 2 separate times for office hours, first come, first serve. Yes. That will start in December.
Councilmember Amali.
Thank you. I hope this is audible. Our internet's unstable. I just wanted to follow up with comments I made at the beginning of our meeting with the situation over at Liberty Plaza. The board, again, the LDFA board was addressed and asked about help in the issues facing the employees and others at Liberty Plaza. And I think I might have gone, can people hear me? I can't, everything's frozen.
You are audible, Councilmember.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not sure what's being transmitted here.
Councilmember, you are audible.
If you can hear me, I will just work with others on this matter, including our city administrator and public safety officials, on addressing this public safety concern that's gotten much, much worse over the last 2 years, because what's going on there should concern everybody. And again, just want to bring light to it and this whole body's attention to the matter that safety issues at Liberty Plaza have reached an all-time critical level. Thank you.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Song.
I wanted to thank our communications office. I took a look at our E2 City News resident newsletter. So if folks are unaware, there's a newsletter that you can subscribe to, and it runs through an introduction to our interim administrator, some guidance on election day tomorrow, our quality water matters report. The Parks has an active park shop with a park gear and wear, seasonal reminders, fall leaf disposal. So a lot of these issues that we ourselves are approached with constituent requests that are all covered in this newsletter, and also a link to Missy Stoltz's sustainable energy utility. So it's quickly assessed. It's nice. It's on Twitter too, and off of our website. It's great. So good work. Thanks for doing that.
Further communication. Councilmember Hayner.
So briefly, just to follow up on the Councilwoman Song's comments, I was speaking to some police officers out in the field this weekend, and they said that they've received some feedback that their website has had challenges with customers trying to use it, and AAPD website. And so if anybody out there has ever had an experience, a poor experience with the website, or has any suggestions or comments on how to improve that, this sergeant who I spoke with said, feel free to collect them on our behalf and forward them to the police. And they're trying right now to make improvements to the website to make it more accessible to the community and so on, just in the way that you spoke of our other website, Councilwoman Song. And so if anybody has had any experience either retrieving data or making a report or looking up something and has comments or suggestions to improve that, feel free to send them to myself, jhayner@a2gov.org. I'll pass them on to the police, or there's also a administrator of the police website that can be found on the website, and you could take a look at it there. And the more community feedback we get on these things, that hopefully the better they'll change for the better rather. And it's one way we face the community. I saw some other things about some polling that was done on sidewalks and some other issues, and it was very specific to say, hey, grab your favorite device that can support this application. And unfortunately, not everybody has a favorite device that can support an application. And so in all cases, I want to make sure that we are creating ways to interact with the city that do not exclude those who are less proficient with technology. So thank you.
Further communication from council. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Song. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Mr. Mahoney, I don't know what they've told you.